Welcome to the Hey Soul Sista podcast, where Mel Histon will guide you through life's big questions and bring you one step closer to doing this crazy journey as best you can.
Hey Soul Sisters, I'd like to welcome the internationally renowned female artist, Lottie Consalvo.
Hello, Mel.
I'm so excited to have you in Hey Soul Sista podcast today because, number one, I love your artwork, and so I'm really curious to hear your story and your artistic journey. And from what I know of you, you're such a beautiful, soulful person, and the whole point of Soul Sista is about looking at different ways that we can connect into our soul and live a soulful life. And you as an artist and a creative, living the creative life, I'm sure that there'll be many a soul sister listening to this and learning a little bit about life through the artistic eyes for themselves. Yeah. So Lottie, now Soul Sisters, if you haven't heard of Lottie, she is such an accomplished artist from Melbourne originally, and we're claiming her as our own in Newcastle, the Novocastrian, but has been living and exhibiting overseas over in Europe. Yeah. So Lottie, I want you to share with us your story about when and how you decided that you were going down the whole route of becoming a professional. Well, and I say professional artist because there's lots of artists, but this is how you make your living.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's not a choice. Well, it is a choice in a way. I think that you have to decide you're going to do it and not have a backup plan. So I guess it was a choice. I was one of those kids that always drew, and it wasn't until I was in year 8 or year 7 that a teacher got us to all sit down and paint oranges. And I did it, and I went, with watercolour. And I'm like, I made it look like oranges, and it was really good compared to the other students. And I was like, I can do this. And my father's an artist, so I guess it must be partly hereditary. So I then just got so excited about what I could do, and I started to do portraiture, and that was my main focus as an artist. And then...
so did you take it as a subject in high school?
I did, yeah. I did. That was my main subject. And I also did a TAFE course alongside high school as well that was in art.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because, you're obviously very naturally talented, artistically talented, and you said there's probably a genetic link there with your dad. Did you actually, reflecting back now, was doing the extra courses like at TAFE, was that helpful?
Look, I personally think that it's really good to get, to understand how to draw and paint things. So, sometimes when my kids sit down to do portraits, I can't help but go, okay, you've got to find the distance between this and that. You hold the pencil like this, and then I know all the technical parts of how to draw, but ultimately when it comes to making art in a way that is distinctly your own, you really have to just dig within the self, and you can't just rely on technical skills.
Yeah.
So, you can be a fantastic painter, a fantastic drawer, and there are some really good ones out there, but they don't show a flair necessarily, and that's what you really want.
Yeah.
I'd rather have no technique and have style, some sort of really distinct style.
And so this is no disrespect, but it might be like, I've been walking along, beach fronts in various places. I remember in LA, walking in Venice Beach, walking down the beachfront there, and there'll be artists there drawing, portraiture artists. And I go, it's always interesting. The style is very similar to other people's other artists that are in that location. They're all fairly similar, the artwork. Does that make sense? Sorry, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you're going, it's more teaching you how to have your own unique
style, yeah. I mean, look, at the same time, you really should make art because you want to make it.
Yeah.
Whether you've got your own style or not, if you're enjoying doing it, I love when I meet people who, they're hobby painters, or they, paint sometimes, it's not their career, and it's like the room or it would be a function or something, and the room just pauses around them and they dive into talking about what they're doing, and it is, in terms of this a soul searching thing, it is something that you have that's outside of the rest of your reality, that's just yours, that you go into this place to make, and it doesn't matter what you make, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And had you always felt that growing up?
Oh, I just loved it. And I think I like the quiet somberness of digging in and trying to find something within, in the studio. That's just my total, that and being in nature are my two happy places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how many hours a day would you spend in the studio?
Oh, look, it's hard to say it like that. I mean, I'm used to be like a 9 to 5 artist, but now I'm an artist that also wakes up through the night and work because I wake up anyway. So Monday morning I was up at 2 a.m. and I worked all day until 5 at night. You know, I had to stop and get my kids off to school, but other than that, just kept going and going. And then other days like today, I'm also working on a script and I'm also working on a video work and I'm doing this. So there's other parts. I'm organising delivery of works to New Zealand, and there's other parts of your practice that you can't just do the making part. I mean, that's my dream, to make it so I could just do the making part, but all of that is making. I make video art as well, and I'm working on film and I do acting, which all feed into my painting video practice. So I guess that's what I like about having this as my job, I guess, is it's very fluid. You know, and then other days it'll be just from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock. And then other days it'll be through the night. And then I work from home and I can work on the weekends if I want. It feels like such a treat. And I feel like magic things happen when you work on the weekends and your family's floating in and out. And
That sounds beautiful. So you were doing art through school and completed your TAFE course. So what kind of set you on the journey to becoming a professional artist?
Well, then I got into fine art into universities in Melbourne, but I also got into a entrepreneurship degree, a Bachelor of Business entrepreneurship degree. And at the time I also was making scrap metal jewellery and selling it. And I'd been doing that since I was 13, selling them on the side of the road, like finding old buying beads, but generally I was getting op shop jewellery, breaking it all up and making my own things. And I'd sell it, and I had quite a business, and I'd supply it to other shops as well to sell wholesale.
I love that, because how many girls, as like teenage girls or younger women, do that or have that dream to make their own jewellery? And look at Samantha Wills.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was my auntie who bought my cousin and I some beads at Christmas time and said, why don't you make these and go sell them? And we did. And then she's like, okay, well, I want the money back for what I spent on the beads. And so we gave it back, and it was quite incredible. I was like, oh, bummer, we've got to give that money back. And then, but it actually, that was the seed of like, oh, this is a business. Okay. My cousin kind of stopped, and then I just I kept going for years and years. And I'd sit on the side of the road. My family have a holiday house, and I'd sit on the side of the road in a little town and sell it. And got to the point where I was 16 or 17 years old, and some police stopped and said, have you got a permit? And I said, no. And they said, oh, council will come past and they're going to give you a warning. And I said, oh, okay. Well, can I stay here until council come? And they said, yeah, I guess so. The woman police officer bought a piece of jewellery. So that was nice. And I'd get back to the house, and Dad's like, how much did you make today? And I'd be like, oh, $1,000 or $600. He'd be like, God, you make more than me. It was just this. I'd spend hours all night making, and so I had this idea, because my dad was an artist too, but he'd started businesses, and I thought, I'll always be doing my art on the side.
Want to fill your soul with more? Go to thesisterco.com.
And then I met my partner, who also was an artist, and the first moment we met, we got chatting about art and started showing each other things, and then we got together, and he was doing other stuff too, music, and we just went, if we're going to do this, we need to stop everything else. And so we did. We made a commitment to just committing to our art practices, and we had to have like rules in a way, like, you know, we don't have backup plans. That was a big thing. We weren't allowed a backup plan. We would only work the amount of time we needed to pay for our bills, so we had nothing left over, so that we had more time in the studio, because time in the studio is the most valuable thing. And we would measure things in terms of tubes of paint. So we would rarely buy a drink at a bar or go to a restaurant or anything like that. It was just this commitment. We lived in a warehouse, totally illegal, living in a warehouse where we had all this space to work. That was in Melbourne before we moved to Berlin. And then that's when things really started to actually happen for us.
Yeah.
Back in Australia, actually. We were doing shows there, but a lot of things started to happen back in Australia for us while we were there.
When you were sharing that, I was thinking about, I guess, so many people in the world and women, talking about women in the world, that want to do something and think it might be a side business, or, you know, the term is a side hustle, and they have a dream to actually make that their life business, their main source of income, or, you know, something that they're passionate about doing. And it can be really scary to do that, And I remember listening to a speaker called Tony Mowbray, he was on one of the yachts that was in the Sydney to Hobart yacht race years ago, and when they had that big storm come in and people died, and he was talking about that experience. He was on one of the yachts, and I remember watching it on the news. It was massive and really sad that this big storm had hit the yachts on their way to Hobart in that race. But in his speech, he said this thing, which I think is awesome. And he goes, no matter what you do in life, you're either going to be committed or interested. And if you're interested, you'll do what's easy. And if you're committed, you'll do what it takes. And hearing you talk about that, and to the point where you're like going, you and James, your partner, are looking to make your life about art and earning like a good income from art, I guess you could say as a business, that you're going out for dinner and going, actually, this wine is X number of tubes of paint, so we won't have it.
No, we didn't go out for dinner. we didn't have the option. Yeah, no. And it's really interesting that, because I know people who have tried to work while they've had children and they've found it really hard. And I guess because I'm doing something that I love so much, I do move mountains to make it happen. And I work at any time I have to work to do it. And I'm tired a lot of the time, but there's no other option for me. I would feel quite lost if I didn't have this as well as have them. And yeah, it is like that. Like you're pushing and pushing, and then you just have to push even harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the commitment, right?
Yeah. And you have to make hard decisions, and you have to have times that don't go well, but I always have to go, but it's okay, just keep going and push and reinvent things and challenge yourself and challenge the audience. And I think that's the thing about me and my partner, is that this pact was also to be authentic and to make exactly what we wanted to make, no matter what anyone thought. And at the end of the day, nothing matters other than us and what we've chosen to do. I mean, obviously the rest of the world does matter, but in terms of our objectives, that's the main thing, is that live in a shed again and just keep doing what we're doing.
And because it fills your soul.
Oh, well, I don't know. I feel very fortunate that I'd made the choice to make that commitment, and things had worked out, because I've had to work other jobs before and they're perfectly fine. But for me, I do know I am very fortunate to be able to have a job that pays me money, where I get to do something that I love.
Yeah.
That's very lucky.
But there's also, to do that, you really need to have that belief and confidence in yourself. Years ago, I have a business degree and worked in marketing in the corporate world for a long time. And then I'd always wanted to be a photographer. So then we went and studied photography and started a photography business. And I did that for about 7 years until I started Got You Back Sister. Amazing. And it's interesting. The biggest thing for me was the mind stuff, was the head stuff. I had so many moments of doubt. I'm like, oh God, are people going to like what I do? And it's interesting when you move from just doing photography for the love and the creativity and the joy of it. For me, when I started a business, it actually ended up becoming a job. Yeah. And I actually kind of fell out of love with it. And I remember those early days, feeling so, questioning myself all the time. Am I good enough? Are they going to like what I do? And that really messed with my head a bit, until I got a few runs on the board, and I did like a lot of kind of commercial stuff, and I got some regular clients, then that kind of, I made peace with that. But I know that it can really mess with your head. So I'm like going, like, that's wonderful self-belief and confidence, and the support of your partner is awesome.
Yeah, I do think it does make it easier that we support one another when we prop each other up and go, oh, don't be ridiculous. Move on. Just keep moving. I think I have this rule for myself to get me through, because I can just dwell on things and run through things in my head over and over, and then I go, no, close it, keep going. Yeah. It's just too hard. Don't open it up. Yeah. I already have trouble sleeping anyway. I don't need more. But I must say that I won't let anything leave the studio unless I'm confident in it. So I never walk into my exhibitions and go, oh God, this is embarrassing. Or if it doesn't, if it didn't get a good response or something. The best thing is when something you think is amazing doesn't get much of a response, and you still think it's amazing, then you're like, well, that is really good then, because I didn't need anyone to tell me it was good. So I have been fortunate that I haven't had I did a talk once where I did a shocking talk in front of a lot of people, and that was embarrassing. But, I've tried to push that away too. But other than that, maybe you have to also have people around you propping you up. You know, like our galleries are really important to us. Our collectors, I have quite a few collectors who collect all the time, and that's just such a special thing to have. And I know I'm really fortunate as an artist to have those people. And a lot of them are, you know, there's a lot from Newcastle as well.
Yeah.
And that really helps you feel confident. And you know they're on the journey for the long haul, and they're watching you and supporting you, and they see when you're progressing in different exciting ways. And I definitely think it's nothing you can do alone.
Yeah.
Unless you have an incredible ego. And I think that is one thing about women that is different from men, is that our egos they're not as bolshy, I guess. You know?
A little bit more in check.
Yeah.
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 Tell me about the first painting that you saw that you were like, yeah.
Look, there's a couple of moments. My first solo would be my biggest moment for me, where in Sydney, I was doing it in Damien Minton Gallery, which used to be a gallery in Newcastle. And I did this pretty intense show, figurative show. I love the show, but it was a very big time for me when I painted it. And I got the phone call. The show hadn't opened yet. It was opening the next day. I got the phone call from the gallery. This law firm's bought 4 paintings. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then another phone call. Oh, someone else has come in and bought them. Another one. And people just kept buying them. And I remember going, clock this moment, because this is pretty big. You know, it was big enough that this gallery was showing me, let alone that people were also liking it and wanted them. And yeah, that whole show, I've got 1 painting left. So that was a really big, exciting thing to start off with.
I can imagine. And it's your first show, so I can imagine. Did you have nerves around that? Like I would have. I would have.
I remember just, I did have nerves. I must have. I mean, it's hard to remember how you felt at a time, but I also remember really feeling confident in the work. And that's the big thing, is that you can't lie to yourself and go, oh, it's good enough. Like I was laying in bed last night, I was getting work photographed today, and I'm like, oh, that one, should I go in and paint that one again? Should I? It was just a small one, it wasn't major, but I'd worked on it over and over and over, and then I finally just went in and did some more. But yeah, I really just won't go, it's good enough.
Yeah.
I don't allow things to be good enough.
And that comes down to that whole commitment thing as well, isn't it? Mm. You do what's easy or what it takes.
Yeah. And you can't say, oh, I didn't have time to put in more time. And I finished my work way in advance. For me, to work right up to the end of a deadline is terrifying, because you need time to make sure the work is good enough. I need it to sit around and keep looking at it and going, yeah, that still gets me. Yeah, I'm still moved by it. Yeah. And if I'm not, it's got to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I go, it's so relevant to so many people, whether it's about art or just, you know, if you're working in an office or if you're on the sporting field, it's relevant to everybody.
Yeah, I think so.
That mindset.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I grew up with parents, especially my stepmom. She would say you've got to follow things through to the end. Like I even finished my business degree, which God knows why, but I finished it because I had to follow things through to the end and do things properly. That was really instilled in me. Do things properly. Yeah. Well, otherwise, don't do it at all. Yeah. And don't start it if you're not going to do it properly.
So tell me about some of the themes of your artwork.
It's for me. It shifts over time, but it's all the same thing. It's really the root of the work has been the physicality of the invisible worlds in a way. The mind is a big thing that I look at, and I guess the absence of it, the impact that it has on us and on all living things. You know, the human mind has dominated the environment. The nature is a very big part of my work, and I use it to parallel the human experience with phenomena in nature. Look at lakes, stones, the horizon, the moon. They're big themes that have come through in my work. But more so, I'm quite interested in now not just the mind, but pushing beyond that into our ability to potentially exist, not just in the physical world. So I'm interested in our imaginations, dreams, potentially other realities, and our spirituality. I'm quite interested in the fact that we, as spirituality sort of crumbled around enlightenment, we then also had more of an impact on the environment. And I think because we are quite obsessed with trying to understand things, because we have science, we only believe in what we know is true, rather than asking questions about, but what else don't we know? And scientists do ask, but what else don't we know? We forget that. Yeah. We think that everything they know is absolute and that is it. But no, they still don't understand 85% of the universe. And they know there's a lot more going on that they don't know.
Well, it's interesting. I was watching a YouTube video. It was around quantum physics because I was trying to understand what are they talking about with quantum physics. And that's a mystery. They're still trying to figure out how quantum physics and quantum mechanics, how that actually works. And, you know, I was watching the video I was watching, they were talking about how they've found particles across the world that are connected and show up at, you know, in different places in different two parts of the world. And they're going, how does that happen? And they're still trying to figure that out. I'm like, I agree. It's such a mysterious place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, the expansion of the universe. Like, I don't think we talk about that enough. Why don't we talk about the expansion of the universe?
Yeah.
Like, why are we not considering that as a part of why we feel different things, or, you know, even, you know, definitely climate change is due to us. But, you know, I'm sure it also has an impact on climate and on the environment as a whole. But we really have, other than, I guess, people who are in sort of indoctrinated sort of religions, we have removed spirituality from the table.
Yeah.
And it's become quite like a naff thing. And you know, potentially because the people who are overtly spiritual take it to another extent. You know, they feel they have to have, you know, all the fashion associated with it or, you know, paraphernalia. And that's also fine. But it does, I guess, puts a bit of a stigma around spirituality. I think to be an artist, you are clearly a spiritual person. Otherwise, you're just documenting something because you have to enter a place of wonder and see that something else is possible. You know, where does it come from? Where do images come from? Not everything we make is because we've seen it. It comes from somewhere within the self, within the psyche, within the environment. You know, like they call it the genius that can arrive, which, you know, I see as, you know, more of a an otherness that is present. And I think that nature is a key entry point into spirituality.
Yeah. Do you ever go on spiritual retreats, or do you go down that path?
I don't. I got sent to a meditation retreat by a friend who just raved about it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm not really a person that would meditate. I like thinking. I like being busy, you know. Anyway, it's completely changed me forever. I went about 1.5 years ago, and now I meditate every day, and it's helped me so much. It just completely transformed my life.
Yeah, wow.
And if I don't meditate for a day, I start nattering. I can hear myself talking in my head, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Back to it. Yeah. And I would love to go and do more meditation. Probably I have a real affinity with India, so I'd probably go back there and do some there.
Have you had any spooky moments while you're meditating?
I did have one where when I was in quite a magical place, as people call it, just out of Rome, where I was about to meet someone and I foresaw a conversation we would have. Just finished meditating, and I just was sitting there for the last couple of minutes before I came out of it. And so I allowed my thoughts to enter, and she and I had this conversation. And then that night when I was with her, we had the conversation. And I went, okay, maybe this is a spooky place.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not so much. I mean, that would be the main one.
Yeah. I meditate, but I'm going to say not as routinely as I should. But years ago when I was meditating routinely, and even a couple of times a day, and also because I was probably a little bit more anxious back then, so I was meditating to try and calm down, I had some spooky things happen. And like I remember one morning I was lying in bed and I was in the half awake, half asleep thing, and I heard a woman's voice in my head, an old lady's voice, and she asked me a question about a friend of mine, and it was interesting. She was checking in on this friend of mine. Straight away I was like wide awake, like, oh my God, what just happened? What was that voice? And it was a little old lady's voice. Anyway, this friend of mine was traveling, and it was about 3 or 4 weeks before I actually spoke to her, and I was like, hey, I'm just checking in, is everything okay? Because it was really weird. I was lying in bed one morning. I heard it was an old lady's voice, and she asked me a question, and the question was specific, and I'm just not saying exactly what her words were because, you know, if my friend is listening, I don't want to give that away. But it was a very specific question about a situation in her life and that I didn't know about. So I said, when I saw this friend, I'm like, hey, this really weird thing happened. She broke down and told me, oh my God, this has totally been going on for her. I had no idea. Wow. And I said to her, it was like a little old lady's voice. This is what she said, even to like, excuse me, love, can you please tell me blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh my God, I think that might have been my grandmother, maybe my grandmother. And it was bizarre. And that was through a period of time when I was meditating every day. And I go, I can't deny that. You know how you go, people will try and fob off those moments and go, oh, he was in your head or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, that really happened. And when I spoke to my friend, this whole thing unfolded that I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
It was only that I heard this voice in my head.
Yeah, we do that all the time. We try to make reasons why we hear it. I mean, I had someone say to me one day in my bedroom, my name, in the middle of the day. And I went, oh, it must have just been a car going past. And then the next day, my son ran out of his bedroom, Mummy, someone whispered my name. I'm like, okay, that's weird.
Okay. I just literally got shivers all over my body then, the little bit of the hair on end.
I used to hear, so it was in our house in Mayfield, and I used to hear footsteps down the hallway, and James, my partner, would always say, no, it's just the neighbours. I'm like, the neighbour's house is 3 metres away from ours. Like, maybe, but it is pretty. I've never lived in a house before. I've literally heard massive footsteps.
Yeah.
You know, like boots. Yeah.
Look, and I'm a big believer in all that. I've had too many weird, spooky things happen to me in my life. Seriously, spooky things happen.
I don't feel, I've had people in my life, quite a few, pass away, and whenever they do, they're not in their bodies anymore.
Yeah.
They are gone, and I can feel it. And I still have my sister's ashes in my house, and I barely notice them because there's no energy coming from them. And I think of her all the time, but not when I'm near her ashes.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there is anything left in the body once someone's passed away.
I agree. I've done 2 viewings of people who have passed, my grandmother and my dear friend Meg, and I went and saw their bodies. And both times I was like, that's the shell.
They're like strangers almost.
It is. I'm like, that is the shell. And I remember when I saw Meg, I remember going, I feel like she's actually in the room with me, standing beside me, looking at her body.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think energy has to go somewhere. So
yeah. So my friend, back onto the art. How do you think art can help people understand themselves better?
It depends. I feel like you need to be open to it for it to do anything to you to begin with. And to start with, I guess that's not being afraid of it or being intimidated by it, which a lot of people can feel like, I don't know anything about art, which any humble artist will say, you don't need to. That's okay.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you and help you get your head around it. For me, I personally make work that I hope makes people feel something. I'm really interested in moments of awe and the sublime, and I use, sometimes people think I use a darker palette, but that's not because it is dark. It's because I think for me, that's kind of like a seriousness I think that I can't explain what I'm trying to articulate, an array of lots of fun, bright colours, because it's not that. It's subdued and it's thoughtful and it's deep.
Yeah.
That's where I see my work, and I hope that when people, encounter it, for me, I can't speak for all artists, but for me, I hope that they it does connect them more to themselves and feel something outside of the real. I'm very much feel we would be a much happier species if we actually disconnected from this world more and entered into the somewhere else.
I love that. I'm so into that. One day I'm going to tell you some more of my spooky stories.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more. Yeah.
Want to save your soul? Review us on Apple Podcast.
Tell me about if somebody was interested, if a woman who's listening to this is interested in just grabbing some paints and having a go. And I think it's one of those things, sometimes art can feel as though, unless you've trained or unless you know that you're a good artist, or you've got some sort of talent, it can almost feel like, there's no point in even trying. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be any good at that. Or they have this, or some women have the perception that art can be a bit elitist. So to do art, you have to, it's like an elite thing. No. What would you say? Like, is that, and I'm just going to say this, it's interesting because I was talking to a male once who was working in the art world, and I actually was like, I wanted to get some of our women at Got Your Back Sister to maybe do some art classes with them and then do like a little exhibition. And maybe not at the lockup or anything like that, but there was some space around here that was vacant. I was like, oh, maybe we could do a little exhibition. Wouldn't that be wonderful? A wonderful experience. He goes, oh no, because that's taking away from artists that actually are real artists. It's saying that art's available for everybody. And I remember thinking, but isn't art available for everybody?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, there's a couple of things. I mean, the elitism thing might be confusing. I mean, when you do become a professional artist and say like someone says to me, oh, can I have one of your paintings to put in an auction for, an auction for, I don't know, what could it be? Something that doesn't align with you or something. I don't know. You've got, there is a part of you that has to be a bit picky.
Because artists get asked all the time for art.
We do, yeah. And sometimes there are things that, or like, there's certain examples, can I put your painting in a shop window or something that you're like, no, because there is a branding that you have to control around your work. Yeah. And that's not elitist. It's just work. You know, that is the business part of being an artist, I guess, a professional artist. But in terms of making, I certainly don't think there's not enough space for emerging artists or, Sunday painters and taking away from other more established artists. That's a completely different kettle of fish. Yeah. And I think that when it comes down to it, all people who want to make art have something that they connect with. They all connect on the same level, really. It doesn't matter what they're making. Yeah. I have an uncle who he loves painting. Whenever I see him, all he does is talk about paintings. He just talks about his art class that he goes to. He's obsessed, absolutely obsessed. He's a window cleaner by trade and a painter by night.
Love it.
And I just love it. And he's just doing it his way and
I'm going to share a little secret with you.
Okay.
When I had my son, Max, and I had him over in Broome in WA, and my ex-husband, who was my then husband, was a pearl diver. Oh, yeah. He used to work for Pasquale Pearls. Yeah. So he used to go out to sea for a week to 2 weeks at a time, and I'd be in town in Broome, the middle of the desert ocean with a little baby. And it was a really lonely time. And I had some friends, but, when you have a baby, it can be quite lonely as well, especially when your husband's away all the time. And so I found out the local community centre was running coffee and craft on a Friday morning, and they would have a creche from 9 to 12. Oh. So I went and got a couple of canvases, and from 9 to 12 on a Friday morning, I would have cups of tea, and I would and this giant table with probably 10 different women that I didn't even really know, just from the Broome community. They would all come there, and we would just all do bits of art and craft. And I remember feeling so proud of my little paintings that I did.
Yeah.
But for me, it totally took me for 3 hours on a Friday. I just went into this beautiful, creative, soulful space, and it made the loneliness of being a new mum with a husband that was out at sea all the time in a tiny town on the edge of Australia in the northwest Australia, it made it better. And I used to live for Friday mornings where the creche would take my little boy and I could just create, and it was the most wonderful feeling in the world. So that's why I go, I'd love for women who are searching for how they can live a more soulful life and have those little joyful moments, and that maybe it's doing some art or some craft or whatever, being creative, and what that can bring for them.
I know a single mother who I think it was pretty tough for her, from what I understand of the story, and she started painting at the kitchen table. She had a son, single with a son, and she just made these very small paintings at the kitchen table. Anyway, her career went off. But I just loved it. She still paints on the kitchen table. Yeah. You don't need a studio, or you don't need a big space. You don't have to buy expensive art supplies. If you go to Eckersley's, they'll tell you, these are still good. You don't, as long as it has pigment in it, that's all that matters. But I think that those community kind of civic classes and are just so fantastic. And sometimes we go, oh, I should participate more in things. I'm like, no, I don't need to, but they're there for a reason for people, and I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, and I know for me it was something that really helped me.
Yeah, and that's government money very well spent, in my opinion. Yeah.
Family
much better than non-military.
The Fax Community Centre in Broome doing coffee and craft on a Friday morning.
That's great. Well, I've been at an Indigenous art centre in Tichikala, just out of Alice Springs, a couple of hours out of Alice Springs, and I was there for a couple of weeks helping out. I made a documentary for them. And, gosh, that was really quite an experience to see how the art centre was actually the core of that community. I didn't realise. I was like, why are there all these art centres? Because they are the place. They're kind of libraries because they're such a small community, kind of a whole library, but the art centre is the go-to. And they're caring for people through it. Oh, we've got to go check on them and we've got to try and get them to come in. And it's beautiful. And you see mostly women at this art centre going in and, having a purpose. And that's the thing. We all need purpose.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling that you don't, you can find purpose that it's just yours.
Yeah.
You know, my father-in-law says this, what's the meaning of life? Whatever gives your life meaning. And I really love that.
I do too. Thank you. Well, Lottie, where can people find your art? Where can they find you, find your art? Are you exhibiting at the moment?
I just had a show ending in Sydney at Dominic Mersch Gallery, and I'm about to go over to New Zealand and show with Banana Gallery's a big Auckland art fair there. The Newcastle Art Gallery are reopening soon, and they own a couple of my works, so they'll be able to see things there. Yeah.
And you have your website, Lottie?
I do, lottieconsalvo.com. Yeah, you can have a look at a lot of my stuff there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Lottie, thank you so much for coming in and sharing some of your story. And ladies, if you are interested in finding out a bit more about how you can fill your cup so fully, maybe doing some art could be for you.
Absolutely. I second that.
Thanks, Lottie.
Thanks, Mel.
Thanks for listening to Hey Soul Sista with Mel Histon. What would help you on your crazy life journey? Email Melissa at thesistercode.com.